In the Southern Hemisphere, where the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean embrace each other, there is a very strange place. Australia. It is both a country and a continent all on its own, a landmass of 7.7 million square kilometers, yet home to only 27 million people as of 2026. A massive continent, but almost empty inside. And that strange equation is exactly where our story begins. Before we dive into Australia's wild history and politics, let's talk about something that shocks almost every visitor the moment they land: the nightlife. Sydney's King's Cross district was once considered one of the most electric nightlife strips in the entire world. Dozens of bars, clubs, live music venues, never stopping through the night. Melbourne offers a completely different dimension. The bars and venues squeezed into the city's narrow back alleys create an atmosphere you simply cannot find anywhere else in the world. What looks like an ordinary backstreet during the day, you walk into at night and find a world-class cocktail bar staring back at you. Melbourne's laneway bar culture has repeatedly placed the city among the best bar scenes on the planet. But what truly makes Australia's nightlife unique is not the venues. It's the people. Australians have turned being social into almost an art form. Even on a Wednesday night, bars can be packed to the brim. For Australians, a bar is not just a place to drink. It's a communal meeting point, a kind of second home. This culture, known as pub culture, comes from the country's British roots, but Australia has turned it into a much sunnier and more relaxed version. And then, of course, there are the beach bars, a beer at Bondi Beach during sunset, a dinner looking out over Sydney Harbour at night. These are not just experiences, they are how Australia introduces itself to the world. As you move deeper into Australia's interior, you notice something. Life gradually disappears. More than 85% of Australians live in cities glued to the coastline: Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth. These are not just cities. They are safe islands that humanity built far away from the desert, the tropical forests, and the giant animals. The vast lands left behind in the interior are called the Outback. The Outback is one of the harshest, driest, and loneliest places on Earth. You can drive hundreds of kilometers without seeing a single human silhouette. And right in the middle of this emptiness sits a town built underground, Coober Pedy. Coober Pedy single-handedly produces 70% of the world's opals, those milky white gemstones with a rainbow hidden inside. But why do people here live underground? Because outside, daytime temperatures exceed 50 degrees Celsius. The solution is simple but strange. Dig your home into the ground. This town has a church, a bar, a hotel, all underground. Once you learn this, you cannot help but ask yourself, is Australia strange, or is it Australians? When you search Australia on the internet, the first things that come up are probably giant spiders, venomous snakes, and crocodiles swallowing people whole. And these images are not entirely made up. Australia is genuinely home to the world's most venomous animals. The most venomous snake, the most venomous spider, some of the most venomous sea creatures, all here. But here is the interesting part. The number of people who die from snakebite in Australia each year can be counted on one hand, because Australians have learned to live alongside these animals. But the real danger perhaps comes from something invisible. Australia consistently ranks first among the countries with the highest rates of skin cancer in the world. The culprit is that innocent-looking sun. The ozone layer being thinner over the southern hemisphere allows UV rays to penetrate the skin far more deeply. Australian children grow up from their first day of school with the slogan, "Slip, slop, slap." Cover up, apply sunscreen, put on a hat. Sunscreen, there is not a choice. It is a survival strategy. Australia's modern history begins in 1788, when a British naval fleet dropped anchor in Sydney Cove. But that beginning also brought an end for the hundreds of thousands of Aboriginal people already living there. Australia was founded as a penal colony where Britain exiled its convicts. In the first 80 years, more than 16,000 convicts were shipped to these shores. Stealing bread, counterfeiting money, evading taxes. Crimes this ordinary were enough to hurl people across an entire ocean. And here is the fascinating part. Over time, this past stopped being a source of shame and turned into almost a badge of honor, saying, "My ancestor came as a convict does not embarrass you there. On the contrary, it marks you as someone with deep, ancient roots." But there is a far deeper page in history that has long been overlooked. The Aboriginal people. Having settled this continent at least 65,000 years ago, they carry one of the oldest continuous cultures in the world. With the arrival of Europeans, disease, violence, and forced assimilation policies eroded their population by nearly 90%. Under a policy that went down in history as the stolen generations, Aboriginal children were forcibly taken from their families and placed with white families from the 1910s all the way through to the 1970s. In 2008, then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd stood at the parliamentary podium and said, "We apologize." And that moment is remembered as one of the most emotional in the country's history. In 1932, Australia fought what may be the most bizarre war in human history. In Western Australia, farmers asked the military for help against 20,000 emus, enormous birds resembling ostriches, that were destroying their crops. The government was convinced, soldiers were deployed, machine guns were set up. The result? The emus won. The birds split into small groups and learned to dodge machine gun fire. The operation ended in embarrassment. Today, this event is recorded in history as the Great Emu War, and Australians tell the story with both laughter and a hint of shame. But stories about animals do not stay funny for long. Australia's most iconic animal, the kangaroo, today outnumbers the country's human population by more than double. Over 50 million kangaroos share the same land as 27 million people. This imbalance causes real problems. Farmland is being damaged. Traffic accidents are rising. In some regions, the management of kangaroos, meaning culling, has become government policy. For an animal so beloved around the world, what goes on behind the scenes is genuinely surprising. The Australian economy did not enter recession for a single quarter from 1991 to 2020, a world record. So where does this miracle come from? The answer lies largely underground. Iron ore, coal, natural gas, gold, lithium. Australia is the world's raw materials warehouse. And who is the biggest buyer of these resources? China. The Australian economy became deeply intertwined with China's growth over the last 30 years. When China sneezes, Australia catches a cold. And that is not just a joke, it is an economic reality. In 2020, when Australia called for an independent investigation into the origins of COVID-19, China responded with great force. Wine, barley, coal, lobster. China effectively punished the Australian economy with tariffs and bans on these products. This tension exposed just how vulnerable Australia's position really was. Now Australia is trying both to reduce this dependence and to move closer to its Western allies. Australia is not as simple as it looks. Beaches, nightlife, kangaroos. But beneath that surface lies a country wrestling with deep historical wounds, a climate crisis, geopolitical pressure, and an identity still taking shape. Yet, somehow, through all of it, Australians keep living by those two words: no worries. And maybe that is the wisest thing about them.